So I did a 3 or 4 video series about LiPo battery chargers, but I didn't tell you anything about the power supplies that you would need to run those chargers. And so that's what this video is going to be about. And I did a whole lot of math and a whole lot of calculations and a big spreadsheet about breaking down the charger specs. But the power supply specs are a lot simpler. Each power supply is rated for a certain number of watts at a certain output voltage. And that calculates to a certain output amperage as well. By the way, someone out there just died a little bit inside when I said amperage instead of current, to which I say, nobody seems to care when we say voltage instead of potential, so how's it any different? But anyway, I'm still saying amperage. I am aware that some people don't like that. I also use the Oxford comma. Deal with it. Okay, moving on. So let's say we take some, and by the way, I'm at Hobby King again because that's just, where I start looking for this kind of thing. You can shop anywhere. And in fact, at the end of this video, if you stick around or skip ahead, I'm going to show you that the right thing to buy for most of us is not anything on any of these commercial websites. But wait for it, wait for it. So let's say we take this 350 watt, 25 amp power supply. Okay, so 350 watts, 25 amps. And it will output, I believe it goes up to 14 volts, but let's just check that. Output 13.8 volts. Okay, so 13.8 times 25 amps is 345 watts, rated at 350 watts. That's pretty honest. But here's the thing. It outputs 13.8 volts DC. Remember that we said in the charger videos that the charger will have a maximum input amperage or current, input current, and if you're not giving it enough input volts, then it's not going to reach its rated output wattage. So let's say you've got a charger with a maximum input current. See, now I'm doing it. Now I'm doing it. Oh, you guys with your nitpicking. Oh, you must feel so good right now. You got a charger with a maximum input current of 20 amps. Okay, and it's rated for, let's say it's rated for, it's rated for 480 watts. But to get 480 watts, you have to give it 24 volts. It's got a maximum input of only 20 amps, which means if you feed it 13.8 volts times 20 amps, you'll only get 276 watts out of it. Okay, so go back and watch that. It's the beauty of the internet. You could just go back and watch that again if you didn't follow. Remember that you may have a charger like this, massive, come on, 1344 watt. Oh, balance, 1344 watts. Hang on now. Input voltage up to 30 volts. I'll bet you 1344 divided by 24 is 56 amps. Let's speculate that this charger has a maximum input current rating of say 55 amps or 50 amps, which means that if you're only feeding it 13.8 volts times 50 amps, you're only going to get 690 watts out of it. Okay, not 1344 watts. Now, hey, 690 watts is nothing to sneeze at. My point is that when you go shopping for a power supply, don't just blindly look at the output wattage. The output wattage definitely does need to be equal to or greater than your charger's wattage, or it's going to be the limiting factor. But also think about your charger's input current rating, because you may not be able to get your full rated wattage out of your charger at the input voltage that the power supply is giving. You may be better off, you may be happy, by the way, with whatever you get off of 13.8 volts. That's fine. But you may be better off going with something like this that can go up to 18 volts. And by the same token, shouldn't have closed my calculator. If we have a rated 50 amp input current on our charger and we're up at 18 volts, now we're going to get 900 watts out. And that's better. Now, 18 volts is the most you're going to find on most of these chargers. The next step up is a 24 volt charger, and 24 volt chargers are pretty expensive. Okay, so most people who want to buy a commercial charger off the shelf, their best choice is going to either be to buy something like this for around 40 bucks and get 25 amps at around 13.5, 13.8, maybe 14 volts, and whatever they get, they get. But don't buy this one. This is 40 bucks here, right? You can go to Amazon and get a 12 volt 30 amp power supply like this one for about 25 bucks, 12 volts, 30 amps, 25 bucks. This one, actually, I have this one. You can actually turn it up to like 14.8 volts, right? And it'll be okay. And you can get a pretty good price for, pretty good power output, okay? By the way, this one is currently apparently out of stock. Who cares? There's a million other ones. Definitely read the customer comments because some of these are like 18 bucks and they have terrible comments and they fail right out of the box. The ones in the price range are about 25 bucks, seem to have decent comments and do okay. And you never know, you might get a bad one, you might get a dud, but the one I have has been great. And most of the comments seem pretty positive. You can see here 4 out of 5 stars. So this is a pretty solid product. I would feel comfortable recommending it to you. But you can do even better. Let me show you something it blew my mind. It blew my mind. I'm not kidding. Look at this. This is a 1200 watt. 1200 watt. This is 12 volts at 100 amps. You heard me right. 100 amps. 1200 watts. What the heck? And it costs $21. And is it a cheap Chinese piece of junk? No. This is a freaking HP or Dell or I don't know. What is it? I don't know what it is. It's a freaking server. HP. There we go. This is a freaking HP power supply for an HP rack mount server. This is like a really good this is a good power supply. This is not a cheap piece of junk. I don't know. My guess is that somebody out there salvages these from servers and sells them on the internet for 20 bucks. I bought 2 of these, and if you're willing to do a little bit of modification, so check it out. Basically, let's go to this picture. If you're willing to do a little bit of modification, like you got a ground rail here and a 12 volt rail here, and then you have to put a resistor across 2 of these pads to make it turn on, or you could even put a switch across the pads with a resistor so you have an on-off switch other than just the power supply. And then you do something like this and you have a 1200 watt 100 amp power supply for 21 freaking dollars. Like, I'm not kidding. I'm legitimately blows my mind. And here's another thing, and this don't do this if you don't know what you're doing. And if you're not sure, then you don't know what you're doing. Don't do it. If you know how to do the right modifications, you can actually wire 2 of these up in series to get 24 volts. It's not hard to do, but it is easy to screw up in a way that produces something very dangerous. So I'm putting it out there. And if you're the kind of person who wants to look up and do your research and figure it out and educate yourself, now you can know that this is out there and you can go look for it and find it. But don't blame me when you electrocute your dog and burn your house down. I'm not kidding. In order to make that work, you have to intentionally undo some of the safety protections that are built into the power supply. And, we're all used to dealing with risk analysis, but if you don't know about electronics, you can undo the safety protections in a very unsafe way that exposes you to much more risk than you realize. So anyway, but you can actually do that, and then you've got, for 40 freaking bucks, you've got a 1200 watt 24 volt power supply that will it'll pop a breaker on your house if you actually crank it up to full load. That's how big it is. And it will do any charger you can buy, any LiPo charger, won't even break a sweat. So if you are willing to do just a little bit of soldering and modification, then this is the way to go. This is the way to go. Go buy one of these and go for it. Okay? Yeah, so you can see it's got a resistor across these pins. And then they've soldered these leads on. And actually what this guy has done is very clever. I didn't realize when I first saw it. He's actually filed this board down so that these connectors can sink down into the board. They're not just sitting on top of the board. This is very clever. So they have very good contact and lots of strength. It's very smart. There's any number of ways you could approach this. There's actually a thread on RC Groups about modding server power supplies. You may be familiar with modding a PC power supply, and you have to put a 10 ohm resistor across the whatever rail, and it's got 5 volts and 3.3 volts and 12 volts and whatever. It's got all this stuff, right, that you don't need. These server power supplies, they just crank 12 volts, so they're perfect for what we're doing, and this is a big thread about that, okay? So I hope I've piqued your interest. If you're going to buy something off the shelf, I think that you can go check out Amazon, get that 30 amp supply for 25 bucks. That's a pretty good choice. If you're going to get something, if you don't like buying that, like something cheap from China, spend in the range of 40, maybe even as much as 140 bucks for this 1,000-watt power supply that puts out 18 volts. Yeah, okay. You know, any number of places to go there. Just check your input current rating and make sure that it's, you know, you have a realistic perspective on how many output watts you're actually going to get from your charger. And then if you feel brave and confident and knowledgeable and aware of the risks, you can even get 2 of these guys, serial them to get a 24-volt charger, and the world is your oyster. Okay. Well, hope that's all helpful. Hope that's educational. Happy flying. Happy charging. Yeah, there you go. Bye-bye.